Hello everyone and welcome back. We've got a new video today and this time we're going over the best Pokemon to use against Zygarde for Dynamax adventures. With the massive outbreak of people doing Zygarde Dynamax adventure shiny hunts, as it is the only way to get a shiny Zygarde outside of limited time events that are long since expired, and working on my present video for the Dynamax Adventures tier list of what are the best Pokemon to use, I thought it'd be a good idea to go over what are the best Pokemon to use and to get to beat Zygarde, as it is the most difficult Dynamax adventure to do. So we're going to be going over the 13 best Pokemon to use to beat Zygarde and what makes them absolutely fantastic. So before we get into that, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more. Before we get into the counters, we need to know what we're fighting and how to beat it. Zygarde is a terrifying monstrosity of a Pokemon, with its absolutely sky-high natural HP stat, bolstered even further by Dynamax Adventures giving everything about a 4.5 to 5 times HP booster. This thing is a nightmare and a half to deal with. Its offensive stats are actually not that impressive considering a lot of other legendaries, only 100 base attack, but its physical defense paired up with its massive HP stat, which is now magnified fourfold, is quite imposing. Its special defense is also nothing to scoff at a base 95. All of this paired up with 3 physical spread ground moves: 1,000 Arrows, 1,000 Waves, and Land's Wrath. Not even flying types are entirely safe from it, as 1,000 Arrows is capable of hitting and grounding flying type Pokemon, as well as levitate Pokemon. Its other moves are Bind, which is bad, but it's capable of using Max Strike, which can drop your stats, and the not so imposing Dragon Pulse. Its special attack isn't quite as good as its physical attack, but it is capable of dropping your physical attack, and Max Quake is capable of boosting its special defense, giving it further tankiness on both ends. When it morphs into Zygarde Complete Form after its HP is dropped to half, you've essentially only done a quarter of its full HP bar. It loses a near trivial amount of speed for a slightly higher special attack stat, making that Dragon Pulse do a little bit more damage, but the real issue is its HP is much larger now. Depending on how much of its HP you actually take out before it turns, because it actually turns at the end of the turn, it'll either have remaining 75% of its total HP bar, or a little over half of its HP bar. Because Zygarde Complete Form doubles the amount of health that Zygarde has, and it preserves the amount of damage it already sustained, it will only have between that range of 50 to 75%. So the real game ender here are those physical ground spread moves. It also gets access to Glare, which is capable of paralyzing you. So it is quite a menace. Before we get on to the rest of the list, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more. We are doing all kinds of stuff on this channel. We have got a Black and White 2 Challenge Mode playthrough coming, X and Y Kalos Let's Play, and we are also doing a full odds shiny hunt of Lugia, all the way back in Soul Silver, in a physical copy of Soul Silver, as well as a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of the Sky 100% run. And if we reach 10k by the end of the year, we're doing a hardcore Radical Red Nuzlocke, and for those of you interested in competitive battling, we do draft leagues. And let's get into the best ways and the best Pokemon capable of defeating this absolute monstrosity. Number 13 on this list is something you wouldn't expect, and it's not an Ice type, not a Dragon type, not a Fairy type. It is Vaporeon. The reason for this is Weather Ball access, as when Hail is activated, it is capable of becoming Weather Ball Ice, which is a 100 base power ice move that is 4 times super effective. Even though Vaporeon doesn't have the greatest of special attacking stats, it is very tanky, and it also gets access to the move Charm. This is a harsh drop to its physical attack stat. As Zygarde's most damaging ability is its usage of multiple spread moves that just hit everything, crippling that physical attack stat is absolutely fantastic. So Vaporeon can be used on any composition. If you have Ice types and can get Max Hailstorm set up, it can go for some big damage. If there is no Ice types in play, well, you can just go with Charm and keep debuffing this thing. Number 12 is a little bit of an odd one, and it's Sceptile. The main reason it goes above Vaporeon is even though Breaking Swipe is only a single stage drop to physical attack, Vaporeon is rather slow in comparison to Sceptile. Sceptile is capable of outspeeding Zygarde, hitting it with Breaking Swipe, and getting it debuffed before it attacks. Vaporeon's debuff is overall significantly larger, but debuffing before you get hit is often better for your survival. Now, Sceptile is not much of a physical attacker, and you are punching up against Zygarde's vastly better physical defense stat, as well as not using a quad super effective move, but the extra speed and its critical resistance to ground-type moves gives it a very significant edge in terms of survivability. Number 11, we're sort of splitting the difference with Hitmontop. Leading off with Intimidate, it automatically gets an initial debuff onto Zygarde. For its ability to do damage, it has Triple Axle, which is a relatively decent Ice-type move. It's not the most powerful, but it is at least capable of setting up max Hailstorm for allies, and it is capable of hitting Zygarde for decent amounts of damage. But the real benefit here is its move of Coaching. This gives a physical attack and physical defense buff to all of your allies. This means all of your allies are now capable of significantly better handling those physical ground moves. Hitmontop is also a relatively decently bulky Pokemon, so even with that Intimidate active, it can tank hits quite well. It's not much of a damage dealer itself, but it can be an emergency Max Hailstorm user if you need Max Hailstorm for Weather Ball users. But its utility with Coaching is far more valuable as it provides a defensive buff and an offensive buff to everyone other than itself. Unfortunately, Coaching does not affect you. Number 10, we've got the wonderful Dunsparce. It is relatively bulky itself, but where it edges out the Hitmontop, despite not having any buffing options, is its access to Ice Beam. It is relatively bulky on the physical side. Ice Beam is a relatively strong Ice-type move, even if it isn't a stab Ice-type move itself. It is targeting the noticeably lower special defense on Zygarde, nearly 30 points lower, on top of being a higher power and more reliable than Triple Axle, and even if you're not going for freeze chances, as you have a 20% chance of freezing with Ice Beam rather than the standard 10% chance because of Serene Grace, there is also Shadow Ball, which is a 40% chance of dropping Zygarde's special defense. So it's a very flexible Pokemon, as well as one that has, again, relatively decent amounts of bulk. It's not a tank by any means, but it can tank hits well for something capable of dealing out decent amounts of damage output. With the first 4 finished and ending off onto the Dunsparce, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more, everyone, and comment below what your thoughts on the list so far and going onwards is. What do you think the best Pokemon to beat Zygarde is? Do you agree or do you disagree with us? Let's see how you feel about it. At number 9, we've got neither an Ice user, nor a Fairy, nor a Dragon user. It is a ground-resistant Pokemon, but it is also something that is a bit of a glass cannon, you may think. And that is a Selgor. Its incredible speed, on top of the glorious Acid Spray. This is a harsh drop to special defense. Just to go over a bit of how stat stages work, a harsh drop to special defense cuts Zygarde's special defense in half if it is at neutral. So at -2, Zygarde's defense is cut in half. At -4, which is after 2 Acid Sprays, it is at 1/3. And after 3 Acid Sprays, it is a quarter of its normal special defense value. You're not really going to need to go that low. 1 or 2 Acid Sprays is really all you need. And why you may be thinking, well, something like Jigglypuff has Friend Guard and also has Fake Tears access, even naturally, Bug Buzz from a Selgor naturally does over 50% more damage than what a Draining Kiss from Jigglypuff is capable of doing, on top of its better speed. Because a Selgor is so fast, it can get off that Acid Spray before any of your allies go. There is probably nothing faster than a Selgor naturally when it comes to Dynamax Adventures. Getting that special defense debuff off and letting your allies do double, even triple damage. When you're dealing with the time crunch that is Zygarde before going into complete form, that is incredible. As well as, again, Bug Buzz does do respectable amounts of damage after something like an Acid Spray is used, while edging out something like Jigglypuff that, even though it does have Fake Tears access and Draining Kiss, it is vastly slower, as well as being much more frail. Jigglypuff gets almost completely Jigglypuff actually does get one shot by ground type moves such as the Spread, Land's Wrath, 1,000 Arrows, 1,000 Waves, whereas a Selgor can resist those all day. Number 8, we have something on a little bit more of the frail side, but this is a fairy type. It is Alcremie. It is a fantastic support Pokemon. With access to Decorate, it is easily capable of buffing allies into absurdity. Functionally, it's a Nasty Plot or a Swords Dance in one, and it's a good emergency healer if you need to Dynamax with it and use G-Max Finale. This will restore a quarter of your HP to your allies, and deal a special super effective fairy move to Zygarde. It isn't the most amount of damage, but considering you are healing yourself and your allies while you are doing super effective stab fairy damage, it's hard to argue that that's not a good deal. Obviously it could be better, but it is a generally very good option, while again having the flexibility of Decorate. At number 7, we've got Celio. Not quite the perfectly friend-shaped Spheal, but Celio is a relatively good bulk Pokemon, but its bulk is only putting it down here as it's not good enough. It barely does not live 2 rounds of moves like 1,000 Waves or 1,000 Arrows. There is another Pokemon that is a slightly tankier Ice type that overall does a bit less damage, but it is vastly better at surviving hits. This is a case where if you're taking 50% plus 1, you get knocked out in 2 turns. If you're taking 49% minus 1, you're surviving to use off 3 moves. And against Zygarde, every hit matters. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And Celio does good damage, but it just does not live well enough. Number 6, we have another Ice type, but this is one that, much like Vaporeon, combines attributes of several different good Pokemon, just magnifying them to a far greater degree, and that is Frostmoth. It would legitimately be a number 1 pick if it weren't for the fact it is entirely dependent on allies setting up Max Hailstorm for it. It has a fantastic special attack. 125 base special attack. Ice Stab with Weather Ball. A resistance to ground. And Ice Scales giving it a functional resistance to Dragon Pulse. Zygarde really can't scratch Frostmoth if Weather Ball Hail is in effect. You have a 100 base power Ice type move, hitting a quad weakness. So 50% on top of that 100 is 150, multiply that out by 4. That is a 600 base power move. That is vicious. All the while, you really don't fear Zygarde. The only reason it gets here is purely because it cannot do damage unless allies are capable of setting up Max Hailstorm. This is one of the few instances where a non-stab Ice user is the best Dynamax against Zygarde, just to enable Frostmoth's damage potential, as there is nothing capable of manually setting Hail outside of Max Hailstorm within Dynamax Adventure. There is no Pokemon that gets Hail. Now we get to number 5. This is the Pokemon that I sort of alluded to when talking about Celio, and it is Piloswine. It is bulkier physically than Celio, having a little bit more physical defense and a little bit more HP, as well as a very good physical attack stat, but it does compromise on its base power of its moves. It is not a big special attacker, and it does have access to Blizzard, and it is a more focused physical attacker with the weaker Ice Shard. Now, if it is capable of Dynamaxing and using that physical Ice Shard, that's quite powerful, and it is quite easily capable of tanking moves such as 1,000 Waves and 1,000 Arrows multiple times, well enough to survive to get off 3-4 attacks. It takes significantly more damage from a move like Dragon Pulse, but Dragon Pulse is also the weaker move in Zygarde's moveset. That is the less worrisome thing to deal with. It also gives increased flexibility with having an Ice physical and an Ice special attack. So if Zygarde is going for max Whirlwinds and dropping your physical attack, then you can switch over to something like Blizzard to do special damage to get around those attack debuffs, or if it's going for max Quakes and jacking its special defense into oblivion, you've got the option of physical Ice Shard, something that no other ice type really has access to.
Froslass does similarly get both physical and special ice type moves, however Froslass is significantly more frail, and is not able to take hits from Zygarde in the same way that something like Piloswine can.
Number 4, we have, bear with me on this, Abomasnow. It has very good bulk for a Pokemon in Dynamax Adventures. It is also a very critical ground resistance because it is a grass type. It is also one of the only ice types to naturally have a relatively high offensive stat at base 92 with a legitimate ice type move. The only other ice type that has a comparable offensive stat to it, while also receiving an ice type stat, is Cryogonal,
or Jinx, who also gets completely obliterated by Zygarde's physical ground moves.
And Cryogonal has absolutely no physical defense. With Zygarde's access to 1,000 arrows and its ability to purge away your abilities, that thing will get immediately game-ended by any of its ground moves. Abomasnow, on the other hand, possesses a 92 base physical attack stat, and Avalanche, which is actually a lot more powerful than Ice Beam and Blizzard. Because Abomasnow will be moving last because it has a reduced priority on Avalanche, it will be a 120 base power hit. And it, again, resists ground, letting you get off those moves much more frequently, capable of Dynamaxing its skirts around the issue of Avalanche having reduced priority, and is capable of setting Hail. And after it actually falls out of Dynamax, it is capable of setting up Aurora Veil to support allies if the fight somehow goes down that long, or if another ally is capable of setting Hail. It is a very flexible Pokemon, capable of doing good damage, good bulk, which is weird considering it's an Abomasnow, but you're not dealing with things that actually it is weak to for once. And again, capable of doing good damage. All around, it's very good. Number 3, we get into the best Wide Guard user among them, and that is Mantine. The reason this is this high over any of the other Wide Guard users is the other Wide Guard users have to deal with either ground moves, always as a Dynamax move, or it needs to deal with the non-existent special defense stat that they have and can get easily game-ended by a move like Dragon Pulse or Max Wormwind. Because naturally this thing is immune to ground, it only needs to worry about if Zygarde uses 1,000 arrows, and it can take those hits even still decently well as it does have a relatively decent amount of bulk. As well as, again, if you're using Wide Guard on this thing, it can't even hit you with 1,000 arrows. And it can absolutely shrug off a Dragon Pulse or Max Wormwind because its special defense is so absolutely titanic. Unlike something like Pelipper, who has a very poor special defense stat, and often the pressure to want to use a move like Weather Ball with Hail as an effect, that can easily lead to disaster. Mantine has none of those deficiencies. Kingler also is a Pokemon that is a bit of a similar stat line to Pelipper in that it is very physically bulky, but it is not very specially bulky. But it is still susceptible to the Max Quake and Dragon moves, which can take it out of the game. Again, Mantine entirely walls it. Number 2 is Ribombee. It combines the best aspects of the non-listed Jigglypuff, which I've been over why it has a little bit of deficiencies, and the already mentioned and amazing Acelgor. Fake Tears, ground resistance, immunity to Dragon, blazing speed, and once again, Draining Kiss. It is capable of doing a lot of support, outspeeding allies, getting off of Fake Tears, letting them do absurd amounts of damage, and then following up with its own Draining Kiss to both drop Zygarde's HP, as well as heal itself. It doesn't fear any move Zygarde can throw at it, other than if it uses Coil. And even then, it would need to use Max Strike from Bind. Ribombee is absolutely fantastic for that reason. However, there is a reason Ribombee is not number 1. While Ribombee is excellent at dealing out damage, and even soaking up damage on its own, the Pokemon that edges out number 1 is something capable of doing all of that, minus the debuffing special defense, as well as supporting allies. Defensively, Shiinotic. Once again, it is that critical immunity to Dragon moves. It is that fantastic resistance to ground moves. It is bulky. It has Strength Sap. which is a move that will heal it and always decrease the physical attack of Zygarde. Again, the physical moves on Zygarde are the biggest threat. It combines a lot of aspects of many other Pokemon we've been over before, things such as the Vaporeon with Charm, the Breaking Swipe Sceptile, with very respectable amounts of damage. It is capable of debuffing the Zygarde, and when allies set up Hail, if they do set up Hail, it gets access to Weather Ball, so it can use Weather Ball Hail. If they don't set up Weather Ball Hail, then it can use Moonblast. While it is not nearly as powerful as a fake Tears into Draining Kiss from Ribombee, it is capable of doing relatively respectable damage on its own, as well as debuffing the special attack from Zygarde, which is not as much of a worry, but it is still capable of inflicting some relatively good debuffs, keeping itself topped off on HP, and supporting allies by decreasing Zygarde's ability to actually damage you. All in all of these Pokemon are fantastic. Obviously, the ones toward the top end are going to be much better, and many Pokemon, when used in conjunction with one another in a coordinated lobby, can be relatively good against Zygarde. Screech users with physical attackers can be good, even if you're not using stab users. I mean, I got my shiny Zygarde in Dynamax Adventures solo with AI bots, and none of us had Ice type. If you want to hear the story about how I got my shiny Zygarde, that is going to be a story time video that is going to be coming out soon. It was a glorious story, and we got it under odds. It was absolutely chef's kiss, top tier. But for more videos like this, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, comment below your thoughts, and let us know what you guys want to see next. We are going to be working on that Dynamax Adventure tier list video, which has been about 2 years in the making. But I'll see you guys next time, and let's get hyped for Legend Zeta.